Well, welcome to this presentation of Save the COFAN, Save the Rainforest. We are so excited to be able to share this with you, and very glad you are here. So welcome. My name is Deborah Novgorodov, and I am presenting along with my daughter Danica Novgorodov, and we are very involved with this project and with the COFAN. We are both members of All Peoples, a Unitarian Universalist congregation out of Louisville, Kentucky. I have it's the International Justice Committee that really sponsors our COFAN partnership out of All Peoples, and I've been a member of that since its inception a little over 20 years ago. I've had many other roles at All Peoples, but that's the one that has been the most consistent and the one I'm most passionate about. Danica, I'd like to introduce, is an author and a visual artist. You can tell from the background on her screen. She's written many books, graphic novels, 6, I think, at last count, plus co-authored and illustrated a cookbook. But the most recent book I just want to mention is on climate change, and it's called A Better World is Possible, and I asked her to show a copy of that book because it's certainly relevant to today's topic. The COFAN. This is a slide that represents our partnership with the COFAN. So and we advance. Okay. So our goals for this presentation are really 4 goals. We want to tell you about this partnership. The COFAN are an Ecuadorian indigenous people, and they have over 1 million acres of rainforest. So we really want to share about this program that we have with them. We also think that this program and our project really is related in a very deep way to our core UU value of interdependence. And we hope you leave this presentation today with a deeper understanding of our relationship, our interdependence with all peoples in the world, but it'll teach you the importance of the rainforest and how dependent we are on that. We hope that this will inspire you. We are a relatively small congregation. We have about 215, 220 members, and we'll get to show you the fairly large impact a very small UU congregation can have. And lastly, and this is related to the mission of our All Peoples International Justice Committee, is that we'll expose you to a very different culture and lifestyle from our Western culture. So the mission of All Peoples International Justice Committee is to make a positive and tangible difference by educating, inspiring, and connecting people with issues of worldwide social and environmental justice. We formed this committee about 20 years ago, and when we started a program to sponsor AIDS orphans and vulnerable children in Kenya. We called it the Kenyan Education and AIDS Program, or KEEP. And we've just completed this program in December. We sponsored over 120 children over that 20-year period, and many have now graduated from high school, university, and or trade school, and they're all grown up with jobs and families of their own. So this was a very core program at All Peoples for many years. advancing. There we go. So here's a photo. The top photo is 20 years ago when these were just young people, and many of the same are represented down in the bottom as graduates from university. So that was our Kenya project. And then now I would like to invite Danica to share with us how we got involved with the COFAN.
So this is a picture of me and my husband in 2015 when we first got to know some of the COFAN people. Um, we went down to Ecuador on our honeymoon, actually, and we um, wanted to visit the rainforest. Kind of by chance came across the COFAN people. There was a listing in a travel guide for eco tours, and we decided to go along and do this. And it was a life-changing happenstance because we ended up doing this eco tour, and we went to Zabalo, which is a small village, pretty remote in northeastern Ecuador. And we met Randy Borman, who I'll talk about a little later, who was a COFAN elder who was our guide for that week trip. Can you advance the slide? Thank you. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Randy in a minute. But the COFAN indigenous people, they are people who live primarily off the forest and the river. They hunt in the river and in the forest, and they garden in the forest, and they fish in the river, and they use the river for transportation, for all their daily needs, for drinking and washing, and for all of their transportation. And they currently number fewer than 2,000 people in the COFAN Nation, and there are people living in Ecuador and other COFAN people living in southern Colombia. They In the mid 16th century, they numbered around 15,000 people, but the population was severely reduced by the Spanish invasion and then some of those diseases that arrived. So now there are fewer than 2,000 people, but they have a huge conservation impact on their territory. They care for over 1 million acres of rainforest in that area of northeastern Ecuador. And it's one of the most biodiverse areas in the world. And they're doing such an incredible job of defending it against oil extraction and mining interests, and keeping that forest intact. Here's just one little example of some of the biodiversity. When we visited, we went on, I don't know, maybe it was a half-mile walk from the river to one of the villages and saw all these different kinds of fungi. And the Field Museum of Chicago actually has done some biological inventories and really found it to be one of the very most biodiverse areas in the world. So this is a map just to show you what area we're talking about. You'll see Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador, and then that red star as kind of the easternmost area of the COFAN territory, and it stretches from that red star to about halfway, kind of maybe like halfway towards Quito in that northeastern corner of Ecuador, and then above Ecuador is Colombia, and then to the right there is Peru. And then this is a closer up map showing the COFAN territories. And you can kind of see that it stretches across this large area, but it's not entirely contiguous. The COFAN have done incredible work to try to get legal rights to their ancestral territory. So it's kind of a patchwork of land, and a lot of that land is ecological reserves, national park, wildlife reserves, and and mostly rainforest, but it really stretches in that direction toward Quito, toward the Andes Mountains. So it's kind of the foothills of the Andes Mountains as well. And then here's just a few pictures of some COFAN folks that we met. You can see, they use canoes to get around and to fish. I think this gentleman is doing some fishing, and then this woman is making, I think, fishing nets out of plant fiber materials. And then you can see above her some jewelry that a lot of the women craft that's really beautiful using, seeds and other kinds of things that are found in the forest. Their artistry is really beautiful, and some of those bags as well. Um, here's some. You can also see the kind of traditional clothing and more jewelry here and the face paint. Um, these kids are so cute.
I know. I met this dad and his little girl during a festival when we were there in March of this year.
Here's a boat that they bring some tourists in. It fortunately has a roof on it because you'll get a lot of sun and a lot of rain in the rainforest. And another picture of the actual rainstorm. So the COFAN also have worked on a project of making fiberglass canoes, which is a cool project that saves a lot of those really ancient trees that are, like 400 years old that traditionally are used for creating canoes. But now they've got this pretty interesting conservation of the rainforest project where they're actually making beautiful canoes out of fiberglass instead.
So
Okay, so Randy Borman, who I mentioned before, who was the first COFAN person that I met, has a really interesting story. He grew up with the COFAN people. He was born in Ecuador to parents who were American missionaries who came down to study linguistics and translate the Bible into the COFAN language. And so he became a really important and brilliant leader of the COFAN people. He helped start so many different conservation projects, really just one of the most creative, inspiring, brilliant people that I've ever met. And we're going to hear a video now of him talking about that interconnectedness and the importance of the rainforest in the fight against the climate crisis.
can you put into words why the rainforest needs saving? What,
Well,
why should the Western world care sitting up in Louisville or New York City or
what I don't think what is very clear to the COFAN community, the majority of the COFAN community, and doesn't seem to be clear at all to the outside world, is the degree to which we're all interdependent. How much everything that happens in the north affects people in the south, in the east affects people in the west. Um, the interdependence of the world, and in this case, we're talking about global climate change as the truly the biggest challenge that we're facing right now. We've got wars going on. We've got ideologies going on. We've got poverty. We've got all of these other things that are happening, disease, COVID, whatever. But the thing that is really could absolutely flatten the human species is climate change. And I think it's something that in a very real way forces a unity on the world. Um, we're all in this together. It's not like some isolated location is immune just because it's not been contacted or that it's behind the wall of the mountains or whatever. It's not every person on the planet is affected. And right now, the thin line, the dike, as it were, holding back the sea of change, is the wilderness areas of the world. And the wilderness areas of the world, that's the rainforest here, uh, smaller rainforests in Southeast Asia, places in Africa, the huge boreal forests that go across U.S., Canada, Russia world. And of course, our oceans are another big barrier. But the thing that jumps out of the page at me is that of the land-based wilderness areas that are still intact, 70% of the land areas are primarily managed by indigenous people. It's not necessarily owned, but it's 70% that is under direct relationship with indigenous peoples. And what that means is that to keep those forests, we have to help those people to be able to manage them. We don't have the infrastructure nor the means as an urban society to be able to handle it. And the other factor in this is that if with all the world hype and the big governments getting together and having multi-million-dollar events and all the rest, if they do achieve zero contamination and zero greenhouse gases at some point in the future, it doesn't do anything because we've already ruined things. And the only things that are then capable of pulling that back are in those wilderness areas. Those wilderness areas are, at this point, we don't have, they've postulated the great carbon sucking machine that, you put it out in the desert in Arizona and it's going to suck in all the carbon from the atmosphere and turn it into nice little bricks. Yeah, okay. We've got it. The forests that are under this indigenous control are the forests that are still active means of turning this around.
Can I just say a couple more things about Randy? So Randy unfortunately passed away about a year ago. We miss him very much, but he has 4 sons with his wife, Amelia, and his 4 sons and their partners are really picking up the torch that Randy carried for so long and carrying his projects forward into the next generation. And so his descendants are really carrying forward the COFAN project of caring for that for the world.
Yeah, so inspiring. And I know that video, I've watched it time and again, and it really makes me understand, again, as I said, that core UU value of our interconnected web of all existence. So when we were there in 2 years ago, so 2024, February of 2024, I asked Randy what the top priorities for the COFAN are, and I had been told by somebody that healthcare was the top priority, and here we were working. We had been asked in 2022 to help fund a healthcare program, Seguro Campesino. So we've been doing this, supporting the COFAN with healthcare. We're in our 5th year of this program now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Randy said, well, healthcare is one of the top priorities, and he really talked about the top 3 that I have listed there. One is protecting the land, and we're going to tell you a little bit about a couple of those projects, the Amazon Guardians and the Turtle Project. Another is education, and we'll tell you about that, the work they're doing to support COFAN, getting educated with university degrees. It's really remarkable. Our healthcare program, which is Seguro Campesino, provides healthcare for many COFAN families. Not enough yet, but many. And then I would put in a fourth priority because I've seen this emerge over the last couple of years even more strongly, and that is preserving COFAN culture. And I think that's just a marvelous example of the forward thinkingness of the COFAN people. So we're going to tell you about these priorities and know that All Peoples International Justice and All Peoples in general supports the COFAN Health with our Save the COFAN, Save the Rainforest program. So we'll start by telling you a little bit about protecting the land. The truly remarkable program that they've got is the Guardians of the Amazon. It's small patrols that go out and move from site to site. They look for poachers, for illegal gold mining, for people who are looking for oil. And this is really a tremendous problem in the Amazon, throughout the Amazon. I'm reading a book right now called How to Save the Amazon, and that's largely based in Brazil and talks about agriculture coming in and cutting down trees and then trying to turn it into cattle land. And so the Amazon in general is really under tremendous threat, and acre upon acre is being destroyed every day. It's really terrifying. So the Guardians of the Amazon are one way that the COFAN tries to protect their 1 million acres of land. And when this is fully funded, it really effectively deters the mining, the oil interests, and so on. By the way, the gold mining is really harmful. The illicit gold miners go in and use horrible chemicals that do a terrible job polluting the rainforest. I want to share with you now, I was just down there in March, and here is a video of Felipe Borman, the eldest Borman son, talking about the Guardians of the Amazon.
My name is Felipe Borman. I'm the director of the Fundación Florencia COFAN. The Fundación COFAN is a foundation that works closely with the COFANs. It was started by a COFAN, my dad, and we've been working with the COFANs for over 25 years. And we work on defending the culture, defending our territory, and looking for ways to sustainable development for the people living in the COFAN territories. As COFANs, we manage through the Fundación COFAN over 1 million acres of forest, and one of the projects one of the programs that's been most successful for protecting this territory was the COFAN Ranger program. Now it's called Guarda Amazonas, and with this program, at one point we had zero deforestation in our territory. We had over 50 COFANs working to protect and watch over the COFAN territory, all the COFAN territory. As COFANs, we're only 1,500 people, so it becomes a challenge trying to protect 1 million acres. So that's why this program was super important, because we were actually fielding rangers in the field for months at a time that were making sure that this area was under protection. But sadly, we ran out of financing around 2014, and since then we've been trying to gain support once again so that we can field our rangers, because we've seen that since we stopped working with our rangers in these territories, obviously invasions started to occur. We have illegal mining going on. We've got illegal armed groups in our territories. We've got yeah, illegal hunting, everything. It's our territories are getting trashed, and like I say, there's just way too few of us to actually protect this territory without any financial support. So that's where, as from the Students Rights COFAN, closely with COFAN Survival Fund, we continue to look for funding to hopefully bring back this program and to take control of our territory once again.
Now we want to talk about another way in which the COFAN are protecting their land. Danica, you want to talk about the Turtle Project?
Sure. So the Turtle Project is a project of repopulating threatened species of turtles into the river near the COFAN village of Zabalo. In the late 1980s, the COFAN community there noticed that, and Zabalo, when you remember that map I showed you, is that red, was that red star on the far northeastern corner of Ecuador. So it's pretty remote out there in the forest. In the late 80s, that community noticed that the river turtles that used to be very prolific, and the eggs used to be a very common food source for the people. Those turtles they observed were really disappearing. Um, the overharvesting of the turtles and their eggs began in the 16th century when those conquistadores of the Spanish invaders hunted the turtles without really thinking about maintaining their population. And then in the 1960s, when oil extraction began in that area, oil spills began to poison the turtles' habitats. And that got even worse when motorized canoes became available for people to hunt and use flashlights and, going out at night to hunt the turtles and to hunt for their eggs. And that would scare the turtles away from the beaches. And, um, people would be trolling the turtles at night and the turtles would just not come and lay their eggs, which further reduced the turtle populations. Poachers would come and capture those turtles who did emerge. So it really did a terrible thing to the levels of the turtles in those rivers. So the COFAN community came together to create this system of collecting eggs, this kind of program to collect the eggs from the beaches and then hatch them on artificial beaches that they built closer to their village where the turtles would be protected from the floods. The turtles and the eggs would be protected from floods, from predators, from harvesting, both predators who are human and non-human. And then they would be able to raise those baby turtles in artificial pools that they built until the turtles were about a year old, and then they would be larger and more likely to survive when they were reintroduced into the wild. So it was kind of just creating these hatcheries for the turtles. And they worked to develop these very successful feeding programs, and they, it was all very scientific method of meticulously measuring their growth and what foods worked best. And they worked with the Chicago Field Museum and conducted population inventories. And this was all really successful. And 30 years later, the turtle populations are very stable. So it was a really incredible project that it was, kids, grown-ups, families together working to reintroduce these turtles into the wild. So that was a really, really exciting project that we got to go see the artificial pools and meet some baby turtles while we were there. So on the left, you'll see the artificial beaches. It's just kind of like a giant sandbox where the eggs are placed so that they can hatch in a relatively safe environment. And then on the right, you'll see those pools where they let the babies grow up until they're kind of strong enough to survive in the wild. And the percentage of turtles that survive is just so much higher than if they are just kind of left to their own devices on the beaches. And so this project is still going on today. Here they are measuring the growth of some of the turtles. And there's two different turtle species that they work with. One is a giant Amazon turtle, and then the smaller turtle is much more common.
So we want to share with you one other Randy Borman video where he talks about the Moriti palm. And this will certainly made me understand the importance of the rainforest in bringing carbon levels down, or the potential to bring carbon levels down, and is all part of why it's so important to save the rainforest.
So in Savalo, we have, out of our 140,000 hectares that is under our control, we have about 50,000 hectares of that is Maori tea palm swamps. And these swamps are one of the world's best carbon sequestration machines. According to National Geographic recently, just a recent publication, that 400 tons of carbon are pulled out of the atmosphere per year by 1 hectare of Maori tea palm. So we're talking about 50,000 hectares that we have access to. And throughout COFAN territory, we've got thousands more that are all pulling this amount out. Given that we may eventually see the world going towards zero emissions regimen, probably too late, too little, and too slow, but given that this is the goal that's on the global commitment plate, we're still stuck with all the carbon that's in the atmosphere unless we have these machines, natural means of pulling this out of the air and repositioning it into the ground. And Maori tea palms are one of the biggest and the best. There's another swamp formation in Southeast Asia that is comparable, that also is doing the same thing. And also, incidentally, is in areas that are heavily being eroded by the agricultural community for production of rice and stuff like that.
So now let's move to another COFAN priority, and that is education. And Danica, I think you can take it away here. Danica, are you going to talk about education here?
Sorry, I was muted. So the COFAN have an education program where they're sending some of the young people to study in smaller, primary schools that might be close by, and then other schools that are further afield. Some of the older students in high school and college level are being sent to nearby cities or to the capital city of Quito, where they can have access to more education and bigger schools and more advanced degrees. So the idea behind the education program for sending folks to Quito to study is that they will send entire families. So maybe the parents are studying to get their undergraduate degrees, for example, and they will take with them their young children. And those children will also be sent to good schools. And that way they can continue to have each generation of COFAN young people learning and getting degrees and being able to successfully navigate the leadership of the COFAN nation and to successfully interact with the more Western Ecuadorian culture as well as their own indigenous culture at the same time. And that way they can, work on, for example, projects like gaining land titles to land that was their ancestral territory, but they might not have previously had land titles. So there's a lot of legal issues that they need to navigate, and they need to interact with the Ministry of Environment, for example, and to protect their land and to have that support to prevent illegal incursions into the rainforest. So there's just so much interaction between the cultures that the COFAN folks need to navigate. And so this education project helps in that way. Folks are also studying, they're studying environmental issues. They're studying tourism so that they can more successfully have tourism as a source of income for the COFAN people. They're studying engineering. They're studying anthropology. So these people who are going through this education program are really getting some pretty impressive degrees. Here are some recent graduates that went through the program. And I think that's Carlos in the center. Yeah, and he has become a leader of one of the COFAN communities called Chandianai. So he's been a very impressive scholar.
I love this picture. Kind of shows the foot in both worlds.
Yeah.
All right, and now we'll turn toward healthcare, which is really the program that that All Peoples supports. So Seguro Campesino is an Ecuadorian government plan for rural and low-income people, not just indigenous, but people who are, extremely poor. And this is the program that we were asked to support in 2022. It is basically a family signs up for being a part of Seguro Campesino. There is a minimal fee involved, so a family has to pay this fee. Some can't even afford that. The real innovation, and this was Randy Borman's idea here, is that we have a healthcare navigator, someone, his name is Carlos Menendez, and he lives in Quito. He is amazing, I just have to say, in his ability to navigate the healthcare system. I mean, you can imagine how difficult it is in the US when, so many of us are highly educated and so on. Well, for someone coming in from the rainforest who may not have the experience with the Western world to try to make an appointment. They may not even have the language to speak Spanish to make an appointment with or understand. They might need a specialist. So Carlos, our healthcare navigator, is the one who really is the go-between between the COFAN people and the healthcare system and the doctors. And he's truly outstanding. So we were asked to support this program by the Fundación in Quito. And I just want to make the point that we are doing what we've been asked to do, as opposed to being an NGO that goes in and does what we think the COFAN need. I can't even tell you the number of programs or examples folks have given me of NGOs that have said, "Oh, what do you need?" and then gone ahead and done whatever the NGO thinks. And, it just doesn't work that way. So just wanted to make that point. Our commitment is to send $20,000 a year for the Seguro Campesino program. We think it costs about $250 a year per family, and that includes Carlos's, our healthcare navigator's salary. So it covers the local and governmental fees for Seguro Campesino, Carlos's salary, travel for Carlos as he travels about the country, and for the families if they need to come in to Quito for care, and then one or two what they call brigades, or what I think language that we might be more familiar with would be wellness clinics, where doctors go out to a community and do wellness checkups or, provide medicines and so on. And so through this program, we really believe we're saving lives for those who've been treated. We've improved life quality, and we're saving the rainforest. What do I mean by that? How can this healthcare save the rainforest? Well, imagine if an elder gets sick and the family has no money to pay for health care. A couple of possibilities are, the community doesn't want to see this elder die, and so it might rent some of the land to a palm oil or a cocoa farmer or corporation, and then the rainforest is cut down and replanted. And you can see, these two pictures represent for me an experience I had coming out of the rainforest the very first time I went. I'd spent, the week in the rainforest with all of its diversity and the lushness and the sounds of the rainforest. And we're traveling down the river, and all of a sudden I see the bottom picture, which is oil rigging going out into, to handle the oil production, extraction. And we get up onto land, and we travel through mile after mile of these African palm plants, and that's where rainforest used to be. And so when we talk about the rainforest being under threat, this is what we mean. And so a couple of possibilities is, if the community is trying to get quality health care for an elder, they might turn some of their land over to an agricultural concern like African palm, or the younger men would need to go work for an oil company or go find work in town to make the money to support their elder getting medical care. So what our program does, we're in our 5th year. We support 69 families at the moment, which is approximately a fourth of the COFAN nation. We think we've been able to keep some folks anyway on the rainforest, and their presence alone, plus participation in the Amazonian Guards, all of that protects this 1 million acres. Our program has treated, well, you can see, those things and more. There was one man who had gallbladder surgery and then complications from the surgery. In total, I think his medical treatment was the equivalent of $30,000 of treatment, and yet he was just one of the participants in Seguro Campesino. There was one young man who was hit by a car, and he languished in a hospital until Carlos Menendez figured out that he was part of Seguro Campesino. He was able to get quality care, and he's on his feet and doing really well. We've also funded I think 6 brigades or wellness clinics since the program started. I've been able to see 2 of those in Zabalo, and that's been pretty exciting. I know that the one 2 years ago, 100 people were served by the doctors who came and provided care that day. I want to tell you a story. In March, when we were there in March, I got to really witness this program in action. One of the elders had an eye infection, and he was an amazing and beloved man. He is an amazing and beloved man. Let me put that in the present tense. And he is also a caretaker, important caretaker for the lifeboat project that we're going to tell you about in a little bit. And he got an eye infection, and they took him to a local doctor, and the doctor gave him antibiotics. It wasn't working. So when we were there in March, he was getting sicker and sicker, and they thought he might very well die. And Carlos, who was traveling with us at the time, changed his plans, decided to leave us and take the elder back to Quito, managed to get him a specialist in the Saguaro Campesino program. The specialist determined that this was a fungal infection, not a bacterial infection. He ended up having to have his eye removed, but it has saved his life. And I was able to see him 2 or 3 days after the surgery. He was doing very well at the time, surrounded by his family in Quito. So I really got to see this program in action and witness Carlos's amazing ability to find the right doctor, match it up, and get the proper treatment. So I think for a relatively little amount of money, we've been able to do a lot of good. So here are a couple of pictures from the brigades that I've seen in Zabalo. You can see children being treated, and the picture on our left is the pharmacy. The couple of years ago, there were a couple of elders who'd had cataract surgery, and they hadn't gotten enough medicine. You know how you have to continue to treat your eye with medicine for quite some time after the surgery, and so they were able to get that medicine through these brigades. On the right, you see a child who's having some dental care. That was just in March. So it's really been an amazing program. I guess one other point to make is when we were there in March, really got the sense of how appreciated our continuous support over 5 years is, that the COFAN know they can count on us to be there year after year. So I want to talk just a little bit, just touch briefly on a fairly recent program that the COFAN has been engaged in, and that's the Cultural Transmission Project. And this is about preserving COFAN culture. You can imagine, people have phones, it would be so easy to just completely lose the COFAN culture with all of the pressures of, the 2020s lifestyle and outside world. So a couple of years, 2-3 years ago, the COFAN embarked on a deep investigation of what it means to be COFAN. And they interviewed many of their people, their own people, elders and others, and really looking into the future, how to maintain their culture. And I just think it's such a marvelous example of the forward-thinkingness of these folks. In this coming summer, they've gotten a little bit of funding to have a 2-week camp for young people with COFAN elders, which will help with the transmission of, what does it mean to be COFAN. And I think a couple of really important outcomes of this is it's going to empower the youth to really have a foot in both worlds, to balance traditional identity with contemporary life, or see with both eyes, so to speak. A second outcome of this project is they have cataloged important knowledge into a COFAN encyclopedia to preserve what they've learned for future generations. So it's, I have not seen this, but I just can only imagine. It's pictures, it's videos, it's written text, and it's just truly outstanding. We want to tell you about the Lifeboat Project, which really could go both under preserving COFAN culture and under preserving the land. But the COFAN have realized that climate change is impacting many of the traditional plants that they've depended on over so many years, plants that are both food sources and medicinal sources. And they're finding that in the increased warming of the planet, these plants are not doing as well in their usual communities. So they have transplanted quite a few of these traditional plants to higher ground to survive the threat of climate change. So here's some pictures. The picture on the right is Amelia. She is Randy's wife and Felipe and the four Mormon sons' mom. And she has given us the tour. She and her sister really have been the primary mover and shakers of transplanting these plants and really having a deep understanding of the uses of these plants. So just putting this out here to any listeners, the COFAN would really love a team of scientists to come and study the traditional medicines. So do they work? Do they really work? Or are they just placebos? What are the active chemical ingredients? So if you know anyone who needs a doctoral dissertation, let us know. So the last thing I want to talk a little bit about is, and this is part of our international justice mission, is really allowing people to experience another culture. And as I have mentioned, we've had 3 trips to the COFAN territory, about every 2 years. Ish, 2022, 24, and 26. In the fall of 22, we visited 2 communities, Doreno and Zabalo, and the main thing we did that year was to take 200 Days for Girls kits. Days for Girls they make sustainable period products for girls and women, and they are washable products that can be used. They last roughly 3 years if well taken care of, and are really great. They allow women to be prepared and to handle their periods. They were really created for students to make sure that girls could stay in school around the world, and we were able to give 200 of these kits out in 2022. And we made 2 presentations to women and girls about why do they have periods and about their bodies, and how does pregnancy occur and so on. So these are pictures of our travels. The picture on the right is the Zabalo accommodations for travelers, which are very comfortable. So you've seen this map, but I want to show it to you again. You can see Quito center top of your screen, and the trip between Quito and Zabalo, which is the red star, is about 11 hours overland and about 3.5 to 4 hours upriver, and that is by canoe, motorized canoe. So it is quite the journey, not for the faint of heart, but really an amazing trip. In 24, we visited Zabalo, Chandy and I, which is a very remote community up by the Colombian border, and we got to see the lifeboat project. We saw the Turtle Project, and we took another 50 Days for Girls kits and gave another couple of presentations to women and girls. And actually in Chandy and I, it was to the entire community. So men and women learned about their bodies. And then just this past March was our most ambitious trip. We visited Zabalo, 4 other communities, and the Lifeboat Project or Garden. And now we're working on in addition to supporting Seguro Campesino, we're working on a Vision and Eye Issues project. In March, we screened close to 100 people for vision and eye issues. And of those 100 people, we are really going to need follow-up to about half that number, some of whom need glasses. Others have some eye issues that should be attended to. So this is a big project that we have ongoing. We also took, and there's an organization here in Louisville called Water Step that treats water. And so we took Water Step bleach makers and the solar panels to power them to 4 different communities because we'd heard through Carlos Menendez, that some of the children were getting sick from the water. So we're hoping that these bleach makers will make bleach that will treat water both for cleaning issues as well as the purity of the water. And we took another 50 Days for Girls kits this year. I'm the one who gave the Days for Girls presentation. I think I gave it 6 times. Beautifully translated by Fede Borman, who was quite wonderful. Oh, I wanted to point out, so this is the canoe we traveled upriver in, and note what's on top of this canoe, on top of the roof, is one of the solar panels that was strapped onto the top that would ultimately power the bleach maker. I have a little video. I think we have a few minutes. Let me just show you. This will give you a sense of what it's like to travel to the rainforest. This is crossing the river to the lifeboat garden, and the river was running very fast. That's Felipe Borman handling the canoe expertly. And this is the lifeboat garden. That's Chris and Dorinda Reif. They are also UUs, and Dorinda is our vision specialist who really started the project to try to test people's vision. This is down the Agarico River. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. But this is the 3.5-hour journey. You can see Danica there on the left. This is Zabalo, one of the cabins that's been built for tourists. This is women assembling for the Days for Girls presentation. Beautiful women. And this is the marketplace they've done for us, where they bring their jewelry. And this is up the Zabalo River, which is just a beautiful immersion into the rainforest. And next slide. There we go. So stepping back from all of this, after our March 2026 trip, I just wanted to share with you 2 takeaways that I had. The first is, and I already mentioned this really, but how deeply the COFAN appreciate our consistent support. They know they can count on us, and I'm hoping that we can continue to be there for them into the future. And the second takeaway, and you've seen this, I hope, throughout the presentation, is just how much the COFAN both need and deserve our support from us and really from the world. As Randy said 2+ years ago, they're the ones standing there holding their finger in the dike, and we need to help them do that. So I would be remiss, I know that you're deluged with requests for money all the time, but I would be remiss if I didn't share with you what I'm seeing as some of the needs, and we would truly love some partners in our efforts with the rainforest. All Peoples has a commitment, as I said, of $20,000 a year. I want to mention that the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth has been tremendously supportive for the last 3 years, and we have a grant from them for $10,000. So that helps us achieve our $20,000 commitment. But we'd also really like to add some new families to the Seguro Campesino program. We're kind of maxed out at All Peoples, but there's a waiting list, including a father and family that I met this past March. He's got a daughter with a cleft palate and really would like to get into Seguro Campesino. So when we did the budget, Felipe put together a budget last year. It looks like we'd need another $8,000 to $10,000 to add the families who would like to be added to Seguro Campesino. So if you know anyone, or if your church could pick up, and you wouldn't have to go 20,000, 1,000, 3,000, that would be fabulous. Our vision project needs support. If you know of any optometrists or ophthalmologists who would be willing to travel, we need people to give these prescriptions or to handle a couple of other pretty significant eye problems, and we're going to need the funds to buy glasses. So we're working on some fundraising for this vision project, but any help would be oh so appreciated. The COFAN, so those are our health initiatives, the first three. But if you have been inspired by the Amazon Guards or the Turtle Project, certainly the cofan.org is a great website you can go on, and donations there are certainly appreciated. And then lastly, and I'll just throw this out in case anybody happens to know of a car company that occasionally donates cars, or some other way of getting it, a donation of a truck or an SUV would be tremendously appreciated. At the moment, Carlos is transporting sick people around those long distances with the use of cabs, buses, public transportation, and it's pretty difficult. You can contact me at the website cofan@allpeoplesuu.com. Again, I'll say that, cofan@allpeoplesuu.com. That any email you send would come directly to me, and I would love to be in touch with you. I would also, I have no plans for this, but I would consider making another trip down if the travel interests you, and you can come meet these marvelous people for yourselves. I will say, and part of what has made this project so accessible to us is that Randy Borman and his sons are trilingual, and so not all the COFAN are even bilingual. Many speak Spanish and Ayinge or COFAN, and the Borman sons speak, as you could hear from Felipe, fluent English, Spanish, and COFAN. So I thank you so much for being here. Danica, any last words to add?
Thank you. Yeah, we hope that you'll reach out and get in touch, and we'd love for anyone to get involved in any way you would be interested.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks.